because I feel like some of the procrastination was like avoidance of saying like, oh,
Mm,
that's hard. I don't want
yeah.
to do that right now. Maybe I had a hard day at work or something. Removing any barriers for studying was, I think, what really helped with the procrastination in general. If you try to have too many balls in the air, they're all going to fall, at least for someone like me.
Like forget that the disciplines is easier. There's no such a thing. You all need to study for them, right?
So they had a lot of really great advice and suggestions, one of which was Genie Prep that they suggested to me, and so it felt like the right choice. And having the like lifetime access to the class was great, so there wasn't that kind of stress of like trying to figure all of that out again the second time around. Making like a little table to sort your questions, like ones that you're skipping or flagging, and really strategically flagging ones and marking down hard questions versus long questions, and was very helpful the second time around. I have deemed the Pompom Method. And I have this jar of pom-poms. I'm feeling a lot more confident going in, which I think came from knowing how much work I had put into it this second time around. With some of my friends, like that email that you get, it says just check your account, and there's that little green past thing. I was like, I need like unicorns and rainbows to jump out of this computer screen right now.
Amanda, when did you graduate college and what was your major?
I graduated from undergrad in 2017, and my major was chemical engineering. And then I had a minor in paper engineering, which is a bit unique. And then I decided to go to grad school and graduated with my master's in 2020 with a degree in renewable and clean energy engineering, which is kind of under the umbrella of mechanical engineering.
Interesting. Did you say mechanical is under
Yeah.
mechanical? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is mechanical and chemical engineering close?
They definitely have overlap. In
Okay.
in undergrad, I took some of those classes that were offered in both departments, but chemical is much more heavy into the um, certainly like physical chemistry side, organic chemistry, all of that kind of stuff. So
Oh,
I only had 1 year of physics, where like if you're in mechanical, you're going to have more of those physics-based classes.
interesting. So did you guys learn about like thermodynamics, heat transfer, all those
Yep.
mechanical? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I still had some
Okay.
of those classes, but I didn't have any of the like design type of classes.
Mm.
I was more in like process control or kind of like engineering experimental design, and not so much of like process design, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Why did you decide to get a master's in renewable and clean energy?
It's a great question. I'll try to shorten. It's kind of a long answer, but to be honest, getting into engineering all started with the BP oil spill that occurred, back in, was that 2008-ish?
Mm.
And that was right in the time when I was getting into high school, starting to think about a career, what did I want to go into for college, and seeing the environmental impact of that, disaster really motivated me to want to make a difference and go into engineering. And my long-term goal at that time was to go into environmental engineering. um, and then when I decided to go to college and looking at different schools, the school I really wanted to go to didn't have that specific environmental engineering degree, so I decided to go chemical engineering. It felt similar enough, I guess. But with my paper engineering minor, I was definitely moving in that direction of like working in a manufacturing facility, all of that. And once I had some work experience with that, I decided that wasn't necessarily the direction I wanted to go. And I wanted to go more in the direction of what I had originally thought of the environmental. So I found this really, really amazing program that was focused in renewable and clean energy. And so I had classes on geothermal, wind energy, solar energy and all of that kind of stuff, which, and also building efficiency and everything, which is what I work in now, more in like the HVAC and building efficiency kind of industry. And so I ended up going back a little bit more into what I originally thought I would do with engineering, even though now I'm working in buildings, which I didn't necessarily expect to to land in.
Wow. Okay. So let me ask you this. Could you have gotten to the path that you wanted without getting masters, or did you feel like masters really helped you to pivot a little bit into clean energy?
I think I think it would have been possible without the masters, but it definitely propelled me in this direction. Because in the chemical industry, more typically people are going into maybe oil or like
Mm,
pharmaceuticals or cosmetics, food, more in that direction, more in the manufacturing direction. And I didn't necessarily see myself in, for example, a paper mill kind of as a long term career. And so this master's program really helped me focus my efforts or focus my, attention kind of into this direction. And I also was very lucky with everybody in college tells you how important networking is and all of that kind of stuff. And going into grad school, I found some really, really amazing mentors who helped me connect with the company
mm.
actually that I'm working with today. Um, and I was able to use some of those networking skills that are actually important, I guess,
Yeah.
to find the industry that I'm in and that I really enjoy today.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so and then you said now you're in building, right?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
like
correct.
a construction, structural, like what's kind of
So the company I work for is a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design and consulting firm,
okay?
and based here in like the Midwest, in the United States. And the group that I work in specifically, we do what we call building optimization. And so there is certainly a construction side. I work more in the like existing building space and doing HVAC, energy efficiency, kind of
Mm,
like data management, intelligent buildings, smart buildings, all of that kind of stuff. So a consulting and working with a lot of clients on their efficiency goals.
okay, okay, that makes sense. Did you feel like getting a master's in engineering helped your career? And do you recommend other students doing the same? Because I don't know, I posted the video, I think it was last year or maybe 2 years ago, about getting a master's or getting your FE exam in
Mm-hmm.
terms of advancing in your career, which one is more powerful? Based on
Mm-hmm.
your experience, what would you recommend to students?
It's a great question. I think to have the kind of funny engineering answer to so many things is it depends.
Right.
um, I would say for me, getting a master's degree was really pivotal in finding my direction because chemical engineering, what my undergrad degree was in, wasn't necessarily the direction I wanted to go um, as a career, kind of long term. And so getting the master's degree was really important to kind of take a different direction. But for someone who, say they're taking mechanical engineering courses and that's kind of the direction they want to go, I would say the FE is probably a more important way to because it makes you more marketable, kind of where a master's degree was an amazing experience for me, but it did kind of narrow my options in a way,
Hmm.
which for me was the direction I wanted to go. But maybe for
Yeah.
other folks, if they don't have that kind of specific direction, the FE makes you a little bit more marketable to kind of everybody.
Yeah, like if you knew exactly what you wanted to do, like, and then you get masters in that and you become really good at it, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But if you're not sure and you want to keep it broad, FE probably is the right path.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. Now, can you tell us which FE exam you took? Because you just shared so much about your background. It was like chemical, and then you went to renewable and clean energy, and now you work in HVAC and still related to clean energy and all that. So, based on all of that, which FE exam did you decide to take, and why did you choose that specific discipline?
So I chose other disciplines for a couple of reasons. I It's been a few years since I graduated school. Like I said, I graduated my chemical engineering degree in 2017, and so it's been a little while since I've reviewed like organic chemistry, which is not the easiest class. As many times, as long as you study it, it's always a little bit complicated. So I knew I didn't want to go back to do the chemical engineering or the chemical
Mhm.
FE because I really didn't want to go back and do that, relearn all of that stuff since I don't use it in my everyday job. I considered the mechanical engineering, but again, because I didn't have a lot of those classes, I was a little nervous about learning some topics kind of fresh for this exam. And so I thought the other disciplines was a little bit more general. Um, I would say it's not the easy way out in any way, but it seemed a little bit more general and it covered classes that I had certainly taken in school, and then maybe a little bit less of what I was less familiar with that I thought I could learn through the study process. I also had a couple of colleagues who have taken the other disciplines exam, and they had a lot of really great advice and suggestions. One of which was Genie Prep that they
Oh.
suggested to me, and so it felt like the right choice to go that way because I had some folks in my corner who could help, and also just the topics that it covered.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. You looked at the specifications and you just felt more comfortable going through those
Mhm.
subjects, even though some of them you had to relearn on your own, but you felt more comfortable with that than any other disciplines. And that's usually what we tell students a lot of times, because we get this question a lot. That's why I asked which FE to take, and usually we first thing we say, look at the specs and
Yeah.
just really see which one you're more comfortable with. Like, forget that FE the disciplines is easier. There's no such a thing. You all need to study for them, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I think that was the right approach. The other thing we recommend is looking at the career, the path you're in or your
Hmm.
career, and then which PE you want to take later, because that one
Hmm.
also helps a lot. Um, Okay, that's okay. This next question I have is, why did you decide to take the FE exam? How important is it for your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I, I it was not something we talked about in school as much because for a chemical engineering degree, it's not as important to go into just with the different fields that you can go into from as that with that as a jump off point. But for my job now, we do a lot of work with government utilities or various things where
Mhm.
having a PE stamp is really important.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely encouraged by the company that I work for, and it was something that I'd always thought about, that I always wanted to. It was always in the back of my mind of like wanting to get this so I could potentially get my PE one day. And so because it was always in my mind and my company was really encouraging it, I decided to go ahead and go for it.
That's awesome. And how many times did you take the FE exam?
I took it twice.
Twice. Okay. Can you walk us through that a little bit? When was the first time you took it, and how much break did you take before you started studying for the second one?
Yeah, absolutely. So, all told, it ended up being almost exactly to the day a year-long process,
Oh.
which is kind of funny. So I took it the first time in the spring. So I started studying. It was like late January, early February, and then I took it in the beginning of May. And I unfortunately didn't pass it that first time, and was trying to decide what to do next, kind of what my schedule was, and due to some like personal travel and some things I had going on over the summer, I decided to take the summer kind of time off. Not completely. My study notebook went everywhere with me. That study notebook traveled internationally with me a little bit last summer. So it's a pretty well traveled notebook now. And but I did definitely let up on my like deep work studying over the summer. And then in the fall, I picked it back up in September or so, and then took the exam at the beginning of December. And then I passed it that time, which was
That's
great.
awesome. This is great. Okay. And how did you feel when you first failed the FE exam?
That one was tough, if I'm being honest, because it was something that I thought I was fully prepared for going in. I was like studied for a handful of months, was had put so much time towards it, and then going into the exam, I remember being incredibly nervous and
Mm,
leaving the exam, I was like, I don't know. In school, you have that experience. So sometimes you walk out of the room and you're like, I aced this thing. I know what I'm doing. Sometimes you walk out and you're like, oh, that one, I don't know how I feel. And so I left the exam feeling that way, and then getting it was a bit of a hit to the self-esteem, honestly.
mm,
And going and having to then go back into work and being like, I do engineering every day in my job. Like I know what I'm doing, but this just didn't work out the way I wanted, and I struggled a little bit with it. But I was really thankful to have, like I said, a couple of people in my corner at work who were incredibly supportive, um, and really encouraged me to keep moving and keep the motivation. Um, and so yeah, it was a bit tough. I think that also played into why I took a couple of months kind of off of the
mm,
studying to just let myself feel those feelings and process them
mhm.
before getting diving back in, because I was at least aware enough that if I dove right back into studying immediately, not having the right mindset probably wouldn't have really been a good way to start the second time anyways.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100% on that one. Yeah, I think a lot of times when we get like news like that, it's so important to just take the time to get through that emotion. Just like, and don't fight it, don't ignore it, like
Mhm.
recognize like whatever, you're feeling. I am pissed. I'm angry that I felt this. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
This affected my self-esteem, and even write it down, or, say it to yourself and just be like, it's okay. I'm going to take a couple weeks, months, whatever I need to feel okay. And then I can get back to it. I think that is such an important step. And thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that with us. I think it's such an important conversation to have as well. Um, I think engineers, we don't like to talk about our emotions much, and we just keep going.
Yeah.
Um, you said something that was really interesting, that you got the result that you failed, and then you went back to work and you're like, this makes no sense. I do engineering every day. Did you feel like failing the FE affected your confidence a little bit at work? That's one. And then the second question is, do you feel like the FE exam is a different kind of thing than work? Being competent at work. Because, like, I don't know if you've ever been on Reddit, but um, sometimes my team and I we would go on Reddit and just see what people are saying about the FE exam and just get an update. And a lot of people would just go like, you don't need to study for the FE exam. Like, if you work in engineering field, just study
Mhm.
10 days, you'll be fine, you'll pass it. And there's also some negative comments, and I actually made a video on this. We're gonna post it in a couple of weeks. We saw this comment. Somebody was saying that this person, because they failed the FE, they're probably not competent at their work. And then to me, they're two different things. Like, you
Mhm.
can be really good at work, and then you can still fail the FE exam. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think it was a bit of a hit to my work in a way of just thinking like, you know, do I really know these engineering principles that are
Mm,
underlying for, I do a lot of calculations for work. I do a lot of thermodynamics work and psychrometrics and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, do I actually know what I'm doing here? Um, but letting myself kind of work through that and recognize it and like putting words to it made me realize that doesn't make any sense because I made it through these, number of years at school. I passed. I have those pieces of paper, those diplomas that show like, no, you know what you're doing. You have a degree in this. And as I've mentioned, I was really lucky to have support at work. My mentor and my manager were incredibly supportive with this, and I'm very lucky to be able to talk about some of these things with them to help keep me motivated. And I remember my manager saying to me after I failed the exam, saying, "Well, that's okay. It was just another practice exam. You know what you're doing. Like it was a little bit more of a expensive practice exam. You'll get it this next time." And I was like, you know what? I think you're right. And hearing that and
oh,
really letting that set in made such a big difference because yeah, job and FE are, sure, they're both based in these engineering principles, but they are so different.
yeah.
I totally agree that with the work that I do, there's so many other skills that are needed um, that aren't on necessarily the FE exam. And there are so many other skills that I've gained just through my experience
Mm,
on in work that you can't have just on paper, that you can't really be tested on. And so, sure, they're based in the same thing, but really they're two different engineering. I don't know exactly how to say it, but very two different spheres that have some overlap, but um, separating them was really important for going into the second time I took it.
mm. Oh, that's very powerful. Yeah, I think they just require different skill sets.
Hmm.
That's what it is. Because
Definitely,
you can
yeah,
have good engineering background and you can be very competent at your work, but taking the FE exam is just different, different skill set. And then
yeah,
also you could be very specific at your work, where it's like you do a very specific thing. And in the FE exam, you get tested on everything, like calculus, derivatives. It's like, oof, when was the last time we saw those things? Like you graduated in
yeah,
2017, but you
yeah,
saw those classes like at the beginning of your undergrad, which was 4 years before that. So then,
yeah,
and then add all the years. I mean, that's like we're talking 10 years. That was just like a quick estimation right there.
yeah.
Since you've seen those materials. So it's not just about what you do at work that you're being tested on. That's also
Hmm.
the other thing too. But I gotta say that that's such an awesome thing, what your supervisor said, your manager. I mean, that's a very, very cool thing to do and say. It, it seems like you're working at a great company with a great culture, which is awesome. Um, w- whenever I hear something like that, really makes me happy to hear that. Like
Hmm.
more engineers, we're helping each other more and helping young engineers, to excel at their jobs and help them excel and keep going with their careers and getting the FE and the PE, which is amazing.
Hmm.
Now, when you took the FE exam the first time, did you feel like the FE exam was hard? Like, what were some of the like, were there any valuable lessons that you learned from that first attempt that helped you succeed on your second attempt?
Yeah, definitely. Um, a few things of like studying wise, in college I was definitely the person that procrastinated and with studying, and I was someone who would like walk into the exam room with my notebook open, trying to like cram as much information in my brain in every final second I possibly could. Um, where I know that this is a tip that you guys talk about a lot of like taking that day off beforehand to let
Mm,
yourself before you take the exam, to let yourself relax, do something you enjoy, like you've prepped as much as you possibly can, actually like get into the flow of it kind of for the exam. I didn't necessarily do that the first time. I was a little panicked and a little stressed. And so preparing wise, the first time I was still in that kind of college like cram mode. Um, and then actually taking the exam the first time versus the second time, I think taking it the first time was also just a learning experience on how to take the exam, um, which is, I know something that you guys talk about a lot because it's a very, very unique setup with taking the exam, sitting at that computer with your like non-erasable pen and pad, that I don't quite understand why we can't just have some pencil and paper. Um, and going through the reference manual and all of that, that was quite a learning experience. I tried to recreate as much of that as I could at home or going to the library, getting a study room, trying to do as much of it. But for me, being in that actual room with other students taking the exam really heightened that level of stress, I guess. Where going in the second time, I very specifically decided to book the same testing center, the same time, the same. So much of it was more familiar going in. So that alleviated a lot of that just unknown kind of stress. And then the second time around, I used some more of the techniques that you guys have talked a lot about for like pacing yourself in an exam. Because I don't think I quite did that as well as I could have the first time around.
Got you. Okay, awesome. Uh, let's see. Let's talk a little bit about resources. So, can you tell us which resources you used?
Yeah, definitely. So I, of course, used the class, which was fantastic, and having the like lifetime access to the class was great. So there wasn't that kind of stress of like trying to figure all of that out again the second time around.
Mm,
But I used the morning class, and then I also went through the statics specific
mm,
course, because statics was not my strongest class in college. So I knew going in that I wanted a little extra practice on that. Um, and then outside of the Genie prep courses, I used I actually have it here with me, the Barron's
mm,
fundamentals exam. This was really great for some of the topics that aren't covered in the morning course. So chemistry or like thermodynamics was really helpful in here. I also used their mini diagnostic exam, which was really helpful going into my studying the second time because
mm.
it wasn't a full practice exam. It was a nice kind of reminder of the different topics. So that book was very helpful. Of course, the NCEES practice exams, purchased, um, a couple of those, and then a couple of other online resources because for me, like strength of materials and dynamics were not classes that I directly took in college.
Mm,
And so, you put a beam in front of me and I was like, what am I doing? Um, and so a little bit in supplement to the Genie prep classes, I used, if I can name him specifically, it was Dr. Jeff Hansen's YouTube
oh,
series.
yep.
He is amazing
Yep.
for breaking down topics
Mm-hmm.
into certainly bite-sized pieces, kind of some
Yeah.
short videos, because that was one of the things I really liked about the Genie prep class was it wasn't an hour-long lecture.
Mm,
They were just little chunks that I could replay, or I really liked how it was broken out. And so his course was really great. I actually ended up spending, goodness, probably 3 weeks just going through one of his entire classes. I think I watched all of his dynamics classes, um, because I just needed a full refresh, and also like kind of learning. So I took the time to just kind of go through the entire course. Um, and so he was really, really helpful for some of those subjects. And then I also used, I believe the channel is called the Organic Chemistry Tutor, um, who is really great for chemistry, certainly. But I think I also used some of their statistics um, videos. And I know Khan Academy is also really great for some of those things. I think I maybe watched a couple of their videos at some point. Um, but I was really amazed to find some of those resources online. And
Yeah.
so I think having a mix of those was really helpful. I'm someone who is very much a visual learner. So
Yeah.
while the book was very helpful for some subjects, just sitting down and reading almost a textbook is not the best way I learn. So finding a video where someone shows me how to do a problem that I can then learn and try to replicate was the most helpful. So finding a mix of them was really great for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you can learn from a book, but it would just take you longer than having
Hmm.
somebody to walk you through it. And
Yeah.
then also you could learn it the wrong way. You could learn how a problem
Yeah.
was done with the wrong way, and then later on you try it on another problem and you're like, wait, my method is not working. And so I think it's
Yeah.
so important to have that, especially if the instructor, they have the time to walk you through the steps and not skipping, of course, the concepts and explaining all that. It can be such a powerful tool. And then also you learn faster and you retain the information better. And I think that
Hmm.
goes for like a lot of people. It really does help to have like videos and somebody walk you through it.
Hmm.
Awesome. This is great. A lot of great resources. I will go ahead and link all these in the description below for for students to check out. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. I want to talk about the NCS. You mentioned you used a couple. So you used the ebook and the interactive practice exam. Is that what you meant? Did you use?
No.
No.
So
Okay.
I just use the physical book.
Okay.
I think I
Okay.
bought it on Amazon, and then
Okay.
I I also did use they now have the online version of the practice exam, so I use
Okay.
that for my second time
Okay.
around.
Oh, and that one has like 50 questions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. How did you find that practice exam?
I really liked their practice exams. I thought those
Okay.
were really helpful. They felt very similar to the type of questions on the exam, which
Okay.
was nice. I did look into some other, well, like the book I shared has a practice exam in the back as well.
Okay.
Um, I, that one, like the questions seemed very different than what I had experienced on the first exam that I took.
Mm,
So doing the actual, like official practice exam, I think was I not think I know was the most beneficial practice exam that I could have done.
mm. Awesome. That's great. Okay. And then, because I usually recommend those practice exams to students, so that's really good to hear. Um, And so, just to clarify for the students who are watching, so you took the morning accelerator and the statics. We don't
Mhm.
have the afternoon for FE other disciplines yet. We're going to actually launch that in the beginning of March this year.
Oh,
So
great.
I am almost done with it. I just finished chemistry and now I just have safety, health, and environment. So I'm working
Mhm.
on that at the moment, and then we're gonna launch it so that we can help FE other disciplines as well. I am going to actually go back to some of the topics that are in the morning and then add more to them, like
Oh,
mechanics of
yeah.
materials, dynamics, and fluid mechanics. And I don't know if you'll ever use those again, but if you do, they will be there and you'll have access to all of that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's something we're planning to do. Once we're done with the afternoon section, I'm going to update some of those topics. But yeah, um,
Awesome.
that's great. Okay.
Just another resource that I forgot to mention was the Genie Prep Discord like community
Okay.
platform.
Yeah.
Not exactly sure what to call
Yeah.
it. That was really great. And with the new like interactive kind of like AI bot that you guys introduced, I don't think that was around, or at least I was not aware of it the first time I took the exam. I definitely used it the second time around. And that was very helpful to go through because
Huh.
sometimes going through, I'm like, this is a really dumb question. Like, and I don't know how to ask the question.
Yeah.
And so being able to interact with it was really helpful for me. And I use
Yeah.
that a lot. Also using just the community that is on that as well. I remember there was a practice exam question that I just did not understand, and I didn't understand the answer either. And I took a little photo of it and I shared it and said, "Does anybody know how this works?" And two or three people responded and said, "Here's how I worked the problem," which was immensely helpful. And I actually understood how to interpret the question. And so the community was really great too. And the Genie Prep team, that responds. Um, that was also a really great resource that I used a lot more the second time around I studied.
Mm, that's awesome. That's great to hear that. Yeah, like I really like the AI tool because like you can basically have a conversation with it
Mhm.
in like you said, even if it's stupid, but it's like who cares? It's like it's a bot. Like no one is
Right.
gonna read your question. So
Right.
I am constantly doing that as well, just constantly asking him questions and like there's this back and forth. And I talk to it like I'm talking to a friend. Like I don't even
Mhm.
need to say it or think about how to say it in a nice way. I
Mhm.
just say it. And then it's a lot of times you're just able to figure out what I'm trying to say, which is really, really incredible because especially because my like English is not my first language, but it gets me every time,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. And like
Yeah.
it's really awesome. And sometimes I even like I would be walking and thinking about concepts, and I would just ask questions like, "Hey, what do you? I'm thinking
Yeah.
about this. Am I understanding it correctly? Am I missing something?" It's such a great tool to use. And yeah, and then we trained it like using our video, so it
Oh
can
yeah.
actually explain the way the course is structured. It can also explain certain problems, how I've done them, and give you guys a deeper understanding of the steps. So it's a pretty cool tool. We're trying to get more people use it. I think people are afraid of using it. Um, and so, but if yeah, and you don't need to learn how to use it. Like I said, like you can just say anything to it, and like 99% of the time it will get what you're trying to say or ask it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
I remember a couple
yeah.
of times it explained how to do a step or something of a problem. And I think I just responded with why. And
Yeah.
then it gave a whole deeper explanation of why you do
Yeah.
that technique versus this other technique or something. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice. You don't have to have an eloquent
Right.
question in any
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
you don't need to think about it a lot, to ask it. Like it's pretty powerful if you're able to use it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your studying, like the schedule. So you already told us that you studied from September to December. Is
Hmm.
that correct? So that's
Hmm.
like about 4 months, 3 months and a half,
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
like that.
So that was, like I said, the second time around. So I definitely had some foundational knowledge from the first
Mm,
time. Um, but I had a very different study technique the second time around.
mm,
I think some of it was because had already gone through some of the studying process the first time, but um, my regular schedule for studying the second time around was I would try to do like 2 hours a night, Monday through Thursday, and then I would take um, Friday off because it's the end of a week, end of a work week, want to enjoy, get together with some friends in for dinner in the evening, whatever. Then Saturday, I would study in the morning, a couple of hours or so, and then um, take Saturday afternoon off to do the various adult responsibilities, grocery shopping, laundry, all of that fun stuff. And then um, Sunday, I made a great routine of going to my local library and
Mm.
like reserving a study room. Um, and I would be there for 4 to 6 hours or so. And that's where it was really nice to have resources like a whiteboard or a room to pace around in if you need it. And so that was kind of my weekly schedule for all of fall.
Okay. That's awesome. And so you mentioned that you did different study techniques. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like what study techniques that you used in your first attempt that you felt like it didn't work, and which ones did you do the second time that you felt very helpful?
The second time around, I allowed a lot more flexibility for my schedule.
Mm.
What I really liked with kind of planning my Saturday off in a way was if I had to travel for work or something during the week and I couldn't study, say on like a Monday and Tuesday night, I had that Saturday afternoon to to have that study time. So instead of saying like every day I have to study X number of hours, I would say for this week I want to study 15 hours or something like that.
Mm.
Which really helped because it gave just some more flexibility in when it actually occurred. And the first time around, I also didn't schedule in breaks. It was, I need to study every day, at least a little bit every single day, which just when you're an adult with, you know, those responsibilities is really hard to maintain. It's also hard to just keep that motivation of
Yeah.
every single day, at least for me. For some folks, I know reviewing like even an hour every day is really helpful, but I needed that break to be able to step away from it.
Mm.
Um, and so I made more of a weekly goal instead of an everyday goal because the first time around, if I didn't reach my, I'm going to study 4 hours on Saturday, if I only studied 2 hours because I had something else going on, I would be like, oh, the whole day is wasted. I didn't get my 4 hours in. Like, where
Mm.
2 hours is still better than nothing. So making it a little bit broader of a goal really helped me stay motivated through the
Mm.
process. Um, and just giving my brain a bit of a break with from studying to go out and enjoy getting together with friends or whatever that is. Um, I also the second time gave myself a little bit more of a focused studying plan. I
Mm.
actually went through and filled out. Um, I'm a big planner person. Like I love a physical planner that has a month layout. And I went through and I would write down, not for every single day necessarily, but for like chunks of days, what subject I was going to study. Because the first time around, I would kind of let myself put blinders on and be like, oh, I really need to like dive really deep into this one thing. And then it would be, then I'd get off my plan and I would kind of throw off the timing of other subjects and stuff. So this time I would say, okay, like Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to study health and safety. Then Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to study probability. And then I planned things out and I really tried to stick to it the
Mm.
second time. And I really tried to, even if I felt like I had more to learn, remind myself I'm not going to learn every subject perfectly. So it's okay to set that one down and move to the next one. Um, and
Oh.
like recognize that I'm not going to know every single problem 100%. And that's okay. You don't have to pass this exam 100%. And so acknowledging that and letting myself move on to another subject and certainly planning more time for the bigger subjects. Fluids, I think, is the biggest one on the other disciplines exam. So I gave myself a big chunk of time for that one versus um, chemistry, which I think only has like 4 to 6 questions or something. That one only got a couple of days. um, I also, one thing that really worked for me, I don't know if this is something that everyone would recommend, but um, there's the electrical engineering like section of the other disciplines. I have zero experience in electrical. And so it was going to be learning completely from scratch on that one. And I decided to just kind of cut that one loose because I thought that one, I don't know anything about it. It's going to take a long time to really even learn the basics. And it's thankfully a relatively small section on the exam. And so I think out of the, I think all told, probably a couple hundred hours of studying I did for the exam, I maybe studied electrical 8 hours. Like, and because I said to myself, know the terms, know some general stuff that I could maybe eliminate, just answer these with process of elimination, and I have a 25% chance of getting it right. If I could increase that to 50 something, maybe that's a little bit better. And so I decided just to let that one cut that one loose and really focus on the ones that I thought I could have more success on.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So were you able to answer any questions in electrical during your exam?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think a couple of them,
Okay.
because I did go through and I learned a little bit about circuits and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think there were a couple. I think I was lucky that I had some conceptual type questions
Mm,
that were a little bit easier to do the like guessing method on.
mhm.
Thankfully, I didn't have any like fill in the blanks that I would have probably just winged completely.
Yeah. Okay, okay, awesome. That's an interesting one. I do remember when I was studying for my FE exam, I skipped moving loads. I took FE
Mm-hmm.
civil, and at the time it was a difficult to me. It was a difficult topic, and then also because you're studying for the FE, like you said, if you stay on a topic for like 2 or 3 weeks, that throws off the whole schedule, and now you got to push your whole exam, and then everything gets
Yeah.
pushed, and now you start stressing out like, am I gonna be able to do all of this and learn all this information? And I do remember, because it was a subject within structural engineering, and I was like, I'm just gonna skip this. But
Mm-hmm.
later on, when I created the FE civil course, I had to learn it because I had to teach it, and then I think it became one of my favorite things. It was like so fun to learn. But when you are
Yeah.
learning for a test, it's so different than when you are learning for fun just because you want to learn
Yeah.
something. Completely
Absolutely.
different thing. Even your brain like gets like tells you like, this is difficult. Oh my god, your brain doesn't help you at the moment. It just makes things worse for you. It goes like,
Yeah.
what, you want to learn this subject that you've never learned about in college and be able to take the
Yeah.
exam and then study for all of these subjects? Like, we don't have time, we gotta skip it, and then it
Yeah.
stresses you out. Versus if you're just studying for fun, you're like, oh yeah, like, I'm sure like if you have this mentality, I want to learn electrical engineering because it's so interesting. Completely different approach.
Yeah.
Um so that was interesting. But yeah, so it's that was a very interesting approach you had there. Um, you didn't focus on getting every single concept in every topic. You tried
Mm-hmm.
to get just the general idea, the basics. And I'm sure you did a little bit more than that in certain topics, depending on how heavy the topics are. When you
Mm-hmm.
were actually talking about your approach, it kind of made sense why you took FE other disciplines as well, because
Mm-hmm.
like electrical engineering is so heavy. It's a big topic in mechanical engineering,
Mm-hmm.
versus in other discipline it's such a short one.
Yeah.
And so it made sense. I love the flexibility approach too. And I think I remember I had an interview with a student who became a dad, and he really talks a lot about that. Like, you have like to move on. Like, if you couldn't show up one day, you just got to let it go, move
Mhm.
on, life happens, and just come back to it later. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing more and more students are recommending that having such a rigid schedule, it just affects you and stresses you out even more.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to find that balance.
Absolutely. Especially if you're a dad and, or a parent of any kind and have those responsibilities. For me, I have a job. I have, um, in the midst of my studying for the second one, I was traveling for work and presenting at a conference and going to a couple of different conferences. And I knew, like, at presenting at a conference, I knew I was going to be really focused in on that for preparing for that, a little stressed about traveling and doing all of that kind of a thing. And so I told myself, I'm a big football fan. So I said, I have a bye week that week. I'm going to take that week off of studying, and that's going to be okay because I have these other things that are a more like immediate priority for me, that once I get past that, I can kind of remove that stress from my brain and really dive deep into the studying again. And
Mm,
acknowledging that when I was making my study plan, acknowledging and accepting that and just saying, because if I hadn't and I tried to study in the midst of preparing for this presentation, I would have just been a
yeah,
big, big old ball of stress. And so
yeah,
allowing myself to take a break and
yeah,
saying that it's okay was vital for me to have the confidence going into the second exam, and feeling like I was fully prepared going into the second exam.
yeah. I agree with you on that one for sure. I think when you're trying to do a lot of things at once and they don't work out, you just like you walk in, like you said, the big ball of, I like how you said it, stress. It's yeah, it can make things worse. Everything will make it not very well, not very good.
Yeah,
Like you're not gonna study well and your presentation is not gonna go well.
right, right. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
focus really hard on that one for
Yeah.
that week,
Yeah.
and then, like, and it went well, celebrate that, really enjoy that. And then I think I flew home on a Saturday or something like that, I think. And then it was that Sunday, I think I was back at the library and I
Wow.
was back into my study routine. But because I didn't actually, that time around, I didn't take any of the notebooks with me. They didn't
Yeah.
travel with me on that one because I knew I had my other notebook of my presentation notes that I was going to be studying. Yeah, exactly like you said.
Yeah.
If you try to have too many balls in the air, they're all going to fall. At least for
Yeah.
someone like me, I really have to have that, like, kind of one focus to succeed, um, succeed in that specific task. So that was really, really helpful for me. And again, that flexibility, um, making sure that that was flexibility and downtime was planned, which makes it
Yeah.
sound less flexible, but
Yeah.
really it makes it more flexible.
Yeah. It's like you have to force yourself to do that, to take the break. Because if you
Hmm.
don't plan it, you're not gonna do it. And then it's
Yeah.
not gonna go well. And so
Yeah.
that's why it's planned, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like yeah, very interesting. I wonder if a lot of people are like that when you, especially when you said you're you're one focused person, like you like to just focus on one thing at a time. I am the same way. Like if I'm working on courses, I'm not gonna do YouTube videos, and if I'm doing YouTube videos, I'm not doing courses.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm exactly the same way. I would take a month, focus on one thing,
Hmm.
and I will let my team know so they don't bring anything from the other side to me
Yeah.
because it's going to
Yeah.
interrupt my work and my flow. Um, and I think it's so important to do that because, like, I even notice it if I'm working on courses and they bring something to me that is not related to that. It's then now I have to return to that thing, and then it
Hmm.
interrupts the learning. It
Yeah.
definitely, you know. And then when I come back, then it really takes me like 2 to 3 days to get back to it, and then
Hmm.
get into that flow again. Versus when you focus on just one thing, you're constantly thinking about it every single day. You're thinking about those concepts, those problems that you solved. It just reinforces everything. And I think it's
Hmm.
very, if you can do that, I think it's so important to do that and try to remove anything that is extra when you're studying for your FE exam.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, because um, I think you guys talk about that you really want to focus so hard into your FE, and it does take so much work that if there are some things that you can put a pause on or cut out of,
Yeah.
your routine, that is helpful. But in some ways that's helpful, like maybe maybe there are some things that you can, maybe there are some things that you can't, like also in the midst of studying the first time, I had a friend's wedding. I'm not going to say no to that to study for my FE exam. But maybe I will say to a friend, oh no, I can't get dinner Wednesday night, but I can Friday night because I've planned that time,
Right.
as a time off.
Yeah.
Um, and because it really does take that discipline, but also the discipline to take your breaks.
Yeah. Yeah. Amanda, earlier you talked about procrastination, and that's something you struggled with during your college. How did you overcome that while preparing for the FE?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that I that evolved over time. I the procrastination I think was a little bit mixed in with just keeping motivation, and like keeping the motivation rolling. Um and so focusing, having a plan and like focusing on maintaining that plan really helped. I mean, I remember it was one of the first days that I started the studying in the fall. I took like 2 hours, and I counted this towards my kind of studying time to make a plan instead of just winging it and being like, okay, well, I'll figure it out every week. I wrote down in my planner what I'm going
Mhm.
to do for the next 2 months or so, next 3 months. Um, and that really helped me, since I already had it broken out, that really helped me not have to decide to do it every day, if that makes sense. Um, Removing any barriers for studying was, I think, what really helped with the procrastination in general. So um, I work from home a lot, and my desk is set up for my work setup. And the first time around I was studying, I'd have to kind of take all my work stuff and move it to put all of my study materials up on my desk. And that was kind of a barrier of, oh, well, let me do these other few things before I get to that, because, oh, I need to set this up and whatnot. Where the second time around, I ended up devoting my dining room table to my studying. And um, I had all my study stuff laid out. And at the end of my studying session, on a certain night, everything just stayed there. So when I would come back the next night, my notebooks were still open to the page I was studying. My, all of my materials were already laid out. So there was no way to make an excuse of saying, oh, well, I'll do that later because I have to do this other thing. It's already all right there. I literally just have to go to that spot and sit down and start. Um, and that really, really helped me. Also, having a separate location for studying versus doing my work was really important for me,
Mm.
um, because it that was the spot where I studied all the time in my house or when I was going to the library as well. It just got me in the mindset of wanting to study because I was in that same spot, in that same study room at the library. And so that helped me. A lot of people talk about that with like the work from home and how the commute is still a really important part of either shutting your brain off from work, going back
Mm.
to personal life, or the other way around, like getting into work mode.
Yeah.
I kind of created a commute for myself to my studying, even if it was from my office upstairs down to my dining room, to like help me transition into study mode. Um, and so having those systems kind of set up for myself removed a lot of the barriers, um, that contributed to my procrastination. And so that was really helpful, and also kind of helped maintain a little bit more of the motivation too.
Yeah. Do you feel like these tips would have helped you through college?
Probably. Yeah, if I had utilized the library a little bit more, maybe that would have helped. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I
Mm.
also, with the motivation piece of it too, and not letting myself get discouraged, because with I feel like some of the procrastination was like avoidance of saying like, oh,
Mm.
that's hard. I don't want
Yeah.
to do that right now. Maybe I had a hard day at work or something. I was very intentional with setting like a positive atmosphere when I would study.
Mm.
So especially if I had a bad day at work or just a long day at work, I would sit down and study. And I made a little post-it note for myself that said like, one take it one problem at a time, one day
Mm.
at a time, like setting some positive intentions before going into studying to remind myself like why I'm doing this, why I've set this routine for myself. I think was helpful as well.
Yeah, wow. You're sharing a lot of amazing things that I think a lot of people can relate to. The feeling of feeling uncomfortable doing the hard things, and you want
Mm-hmm.
to avoid studying because of that. And especially, after a long day of work, it's very difficult to get yourself to sit down and study. And you created such an awesome system. You removed a lot of friction, like having,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I gotta take all this stuff and then set it on my work office. You know what? Let me just have it completely different spot for studying. So important. And I think you also did time blocking, like for the
Mm-hmm.
your schedule. You basically blocked time every single day. This is when I'm going to study, and then that removed willpower. So you just
Mm-hmm.
do, it was time. Oh, it's time, I'm going to show up and study. Like there was no, you like a room for you to argue with yourself or make excuses,
Yeah.
because like I said earlier, our brain never helps us to
Yeah.
get to it. So it's like you got to set up all these tricks to go, like, to trick your brain to just enjoy it and go into it and start studying. Because the moment
Yeah.
you ask yourself, should we go study right now? The answer is going to be no every time. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so you have to set up systems, and I think you
Mhm.
really did amazing. You approached it very well, and of course, as the result of that, you were able to study and learn the information and pass your FE exam. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, thank you. There is another system that I set up for myself, less for the procrastination side, but a little bit more for the motivation piece. Um, that do you mind if I talk about that
Yeah, of
now? Oh,
course.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, one thing for motivation that I discovered, to be honest, just I think online, like on Instagram or something, a woman said that she does this not necessarily for studying, but is what I have deemed the Pompom method. um,
Okay.
and I have this jar of pom poms that I
Okay.
decided for every hour of studying, I would add a little pom pom to a cup or bowl or whatever, um, as a physical representation of my studying. Because in some ways, I would get discouraged because I'd be like, oh, I feel like I've studied so much, but I still don't understand X, Y, or Z, like
Mhm.
this topic, where having a physical representation of, no, look how many hours you've studied, like in a jar, really helps show me, oh, you've studied, I don't know, fill it up however high you want. Look at all the work that you've put in and like what you've done so far. You have put in the work, you know what you're doing, kind of a thing. Um, and so I think at the end, this is the actual jar. I just bought the pom poms on Amazon or something, and this is I think a flower vase I found in my basement. And filling this up by the end, I had a couple hundred hours of studying, um, that I could see. I like,
Yeah,
instead of just knowing that I did it, I could actually
right.
see a representation of the work I put in. And if I met my hours goal, my little pom pom goal at the end of the week, I would treat myself to something, or like go out to
Oh,
lunch one day at work, or go get a special coffee, or um, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And then at the end, if I filled up my big goal, filling up this vase, then I would treat myself to something like extra special. So like putting some extra money in a travel fund or buying myself something special to celebrate at the end. Um, this was surprisingly motivational for me because this sat on my desk or sat on my study spot every day. And at the end of my studying, I would say, okay, I studied 2 hours, so two pom poms go in the jar. Um,
Hey.
and it also is just kind of fun to look at with all
Yeah.
the fun little colors and a pretty cheap way of showing myself that I was putting the work in. And so I'm like, what am I going to do with a jar of pom poms? But I almost don't want to get rid of it, you know?
I love it. I really like that. I'm gonna probably share it with in
Yeah.
our channel, and with our students. It's so powerful because, like you said, like you can say, "Oh, I studied this many hours," versus actually seeing all your work and your
Mm-hmm.
effort. Because it's so hard to measure that when we're studying for the FE exam. The only way to measure it is by getting the result, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of times it's very heartbreaking for people when they fail the FE because
Mm-hmm.
all that effort that they have nothing to show for. They
Yeah.
could be able to show like I actually studied for this guys like they failed the FE. And so that's so powerful because it's like, like I always say, it doesn't matter how many times you fail as long as at the end you pass. Failing,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't define you. But that it could be like, I put this many hours to studying for the FE. It's okay that I
Yeah.
failed. You know what? I'm gonna keep going and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna till I pass my FE exam. Something that you can show, right? To prove your effort. I love that. Like that is so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
I really loved it. I think the woman used it for like just chores around her house. Like if she emptied the dishwasher
mm,
or did a load of laundry or something, would toss a pom pom in and then treat herself to something at the end of the week. And so I love that idea. Just kind of in general, I think that's
yeah.
that's really fun. But yeah, for studying, I really like that. Exactly like you said. If I didn't pass it the second time, I could stop and look at that jar and be like, look at all the work I did put in to this and like how much effort this took.
Mhm.
It's still a win. And it's still my plan was to still treat myself to something, maybe something, certainly smaller than if I passed it, but to be like, you still succeeded in your plan of filling up this jar, studying this many hours, but you just have to do it again. Thankfully, I
Yeah,
don't have to do it again. But yeah, that was a really powerful tool for me the second time around.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you don't need to get rid of it because you're probably gonna need it for your PE.
True.
Not yet. Not
Yeah.
yet. Okay, that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your exam. How did you feel before you went into your exam the second time around?
Second time around, I definitely felt more confident going in. I felt much calmer the second time around. To be honest, I don't think I slept at all the night before the first time I took it. I was so stressed, but I really really tried to get a better night's sleep the night before. So just in general, feeling a little bit more refreshed, um, and feeling a lot more confident going in, um, which I think came from knowing how much work I had put into it this
Mm,
second time around. Just kind of boosting the confidence. And for some folks, going out and like I shouldn't say just some folks. For me, going outside and doing like a couple of like running in place or maybe like jumping jacks or something to get that nervous energy out before I walked in,
yeah.
um, was really helpful because I still had I was maybe a smaller ball of energy of stress, but still it was still there. And so definitely feeling more confident the second time around. And having that familiar space was also kind of nice
Mm,
because the check-in process for the exam is not difficult in any way, but if you're not expecting that check-in process and all of that can throw you off a little bit too. And so that was nice to know kind of what I was going into.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it definitely throws you off the first time you take it. Like when I
Yeah.
remember when I went in, I was like, oh, like it's just like I knew it was serious, but it's just like another level of seriousness. You get there
Yeah.
and you're like, whoa, like, okay, I'm about to take the exam. This is like super serious. They take your pictures, fingerprints, and they
Yeah.
check your jackets. And if you actually, I think if you have a jacket, I remember somebody had a jacket and they were like, nope, you can't bring that in. Because
Yep.
they're not sure what you might have in there.
Right.
But
Take your
yeah,
glasses off. They have to
you
look at
yeah,
those. Like I had my
yeah.
hair in a ponytail, had to look under my ponytail. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like I'm going into
yeah.
the FBI or something right now. What is
Right.
happening?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's interesting. And then that just really adds a lot of stress, especially if you don't expect it. And then
Mhm.
the other thing too, I remember I got in there and then they had a lot of questions before the exam started. And
Yeah.
then you have to read that. And I'm like, what am I signing?
Yeah.
And so I had to go through that. And then the other thing that really threw me off was the reference handbook. That was for me
Hmm.
the biggest one. Um,
Yeah.
because the way I use it with the control F, it's so different than their search
Yeah.
box. And then I was like,
Hmm.
wait, oh, like I actually have to click on these pages to get to the equation.
Yeah.
So that, and then the timer too, because it
Yeah.
starts the other way. I think it starts like how much we have 5 hours and 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
so then it starts going back. And then I had to pause for a minute to go, okay, I only want to spend like 2 hours and a half in the morning and do the math so
Hmm.
it really takes you a bit of time to adjust to it.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Taking the
yeah,
exam is an interesting learning process.
yeah.
Yeah. I thankfully, thanks to one of the videos on the channel, I had learned about the other, I forget exactly how to get to it, but the other way of searching in the PDF
Mm,
that you can
yeah.
do just on your own
Hmm.
computer. And I was really practicing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And to get kind of in that mode. Um, but yeah, just how to time yourself through the exam was something I did a lot better the second time around than the first time. And some of that I think is thanks to Rim and your team, because talking about um, making like a little table to sort your questions, like ones that you're
Mm-hmm.
skipping or flagging, and really strategically flagging ones and marking down hard questions versus long questions, and
Mm-hmm.
was very helpful the second time around, because going through and being able to and just like answering question after question after question really improves your momentum and your confidence in tackling those hard questions, um, and also accepting that there are some questions you're not going to have any idea what they're asking. I definitely ran into some questions. I remember in like the static section that I was like, I don't know what this is asking me really to do here.
Wow.
And just saying, okay, that's fine. We're going to save it to the end. I'll figure it out at that point. And even at that point, I was like, okay, I'm not going to figure it out. And that's okay. I'm just going to guess. and,
Yeah.
um, and so going through the exam in a certain way, um, was very helpful to just feel more confident in the exam room too.
Yeah, and this really goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about how taking the FE exam is like a skill set. Like there
Yeah.
are all these tips that could actually really increase your chances of passing the FE exam. And that's what I really try to do in this channel, to share with you guys those tips on how you can pass the FE exam faster. Because I've met
Hmm.
many students that have been in this journey for years, like 3 years, 4 years, trying to pass the FE. But it's like if you have the right tools to study effectively, if you have the right study resources, if you have the right tips to take the exam, because it's just all strategies, and
Hmm.
you can do it in a short amount of time. I mean, when you started to now, it took you a year. I mean, that's amazing. You did that in 1 year, and now you have your EIT. Like a year ago, exactly a year ago, you didn't have it. I mean,
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like that's how you can do it literally in. And what is 1 year compared to your whole career, compared to your engineering degree? Even your
Yeah.
engineering degree, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have those tools, and to get good at taking tests, taking a lot of
Hmm.
practice exams, getting yourself
Yeah.
familiar with the exam environment, the search box that we were talking about, all these things, the calculator, how to use it effectively,
Hmm.
always using the reference handbook, studying what's on your exam. All these things are going to really increase your chances of passing your FE exam faster. Um,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, very, very, very powerful. That's amazing. So you were able to do better on the second time, manage your time better because of all this skills. The other thing I always mention to students is crazy how much studying for the FE teach us so much about ourselves at the end of the journey. It's like, did you learn, right? You
Yeah.
learn so much, like time blocking, having, separate,
Yeah.
place to study for this is what works for me. This is what doesn't work for,
Yeah.
sitting and just, be with my emotions. And it's literally, it's like therapy. It's like you learn so much about yourself at the end of the journey. It's,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so true. I mean, at work now, I time block on my calendar all the
Oh, wow.
time. I'll
Yeah.
put focus time, if do this report or whatever,
Hmm.
and I'll put those like 2 hour chunks on
Yeah.
there, because it before, I thought like, oh yeah, I'll just work on it. But you're so right about the distractions with if I get an email from somebody, just
Hmm.
that 30 seconds of reading that email, well, that's really a
Yeah.
5 minute thing of trying to get back into your task. So
Yeah.
I have translated some of this stuff into
Yeah.
just my everyday how I work now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And your
Hmm.
productivity is going to increase as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I always tell my team that as well. I'm like, you don't need to respond to me all the time. Like
Oh yeah.
time block, go do your work, go do your first work. And it's so fulfilling. Like
Hmm.
when you focus those 2 hours, the amount you get done, first of all, it's incredible the amount of work
Yeah.
you get done. Also, when you set yourself to just for the 2 hours, you actually do it in 2 hours. Like the other thing too,
Yes.
they found out is
Yeah.
that if you tell yourself, I'm going to take all day to do this, you are going to take all the day to do it. But if you actually literally limit
Hmm.
yourself to 2 hours, you will be able to get it done in 2 hours. It's
Hmm.
incredible how our brain works. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, this yeah. Now that you have your EIT, how do you feel?
Great. It was such a great day when I found out. I joked with some of my friends, like that email that you get, it says just check your account, and there's that little green past thing. I was like, I need like unicorns and rainbows to jump out of this computer screen right now. um, just this little green box isn't quite enough of a celebration. But it that was such a wonderful email to get, and it felt I was relieved. I mean, just to have this behind me and have, all of that done. It also was really affirming, I guess, to have that like, yeah, I do know what I'm doing. That kind of affirmation of, yeah, this is what I should be doing. I'm good at engineering. Like I have those principles. I have those principles locked in, I guess, at this point. Which felt great. And like I said, kind of relieved, excited, and then thinking about the next steps and how this can help me, personally kind of feel that, and also professionally. That's really nice to be able to put that on a business card now or whatnot.
Yeah,
Um, that's really nice to have in my back pocket also.
that's awesome. Did you do anything to celebrate?
Yeah, a couple of things. Went out to dinner with some friends the night of. Which was a lot of fun. And I think that our waiter was a little confused about what was happening because there was a lot of like dancing in our seat. That they were like, "Is it someone's birthday? Like, what is happening?" Um, so yeah, we celebrated, which was a lot of fun that night. And then since I reached my goal, I've put some money towards a big trip that has kind of been
Oh,
a bucket list trip that I'm hoping to do. And um, so set a little extra money aside for that. And since it was right before Christmas, for me, that I found out, I decided to treat myself to, a couple of little extra like gifts for myself. Um, so yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun being able to tell some folks at work and be able to celebrate with them a little bit. Um, and so it's felt really nice to have that done and be able to celebrate it with other folks.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Okay, now that you passed the FE, how did it affect your professional life?
um I I would say I don't quite know yet since it's been about a month since I officially found out. And so I think um now a lot of folks are talking about the PE and what that can look like, and how that can help, help my career kind of in one way or another. Um, and I know it's something that our company can help, uh, help boost kind of the work that we're doing with the team. I'm very lucky to work with a number of PEs on my team. Um, and uh, and so it's really nice to have that kind of certification, with your name. Shows It's a good way to show the rest of the world that, you are certified or qualified in those certain areas. And so it hasn't drastically changed my like day-to-day work, but I think over time, and especially as I move towards the PE, it'll it'll help just kind of boost those credentials, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Are you planning to take your PE exam soon?
Good question. I don't know yet. That one I'm still figuring out.
Okay.
Given myself a little bit of time off to celebrate and focus on some other things in my life. But I'm definitely starting to think about what that could look like, and it figuring out kind of a timeline for studying. So yeah, that's still getting figured out at this point.
Okay. Have you decided which PE to take?
I probably will do the HVAC one. It's
Okay.
most related to my job. And I, again, am lucky to have some colleagues that have taken that PE within the last year or so. And so they can be some good resources for motivation, and also finding kind of where to start with studying.
Awesome. And I have one more question for you, Amanda. If a student comes up to you and asks you to list three things that really helped you pass your FE exam, what would you say to them?
Ooh, I would say not necessarily in like order of priority, I guess, but um, scheduling, flexibility
Mm,
in your plan, um, I think is incredibly important.
mm,
Um, then having having people in your corner that you can go to, um, whether it be personal, like your family or your friends, professionally, if you're lucky to have a manager or a mentor at work that's supportive of this stuff, or even um, the Genie Prep community, like having that um, for those moments when you will inevitably doubt yourself or have some confidence, low confidence, being able to turn to anyone or all of those folks and talk it through, or even, a professional, like mental health therapist or something like that. If you have the ability to do that, having somebody to talk to and talk through those things, I think is incredibly important. um, and I know I've talked a lot with Rim over the course of the last year or so, and she's been really great checking in at different points and saying, how's it going? Or anything our team can do to help. And at having those, it's almost like accountability partners also, um, who will check in on you to, one, make sure you're okay, and also saying, like, are you keeping up with that plan? Are you keeping up with that schedule?
mhm.
Is really helpful. And then third, I would say, I mean, none of these are necessarily like resource wise, but the third most important thing for me, at least, was um, like giving myself a little, uh, how do I want to say this? Like giving yourself a break and treating yourself to even the small wins and acknowledging that those small wins are still really important. Like I said, with the pom poms, you know, sometimes it just going out and treating myself to a fancy coffee or something was a great motivator to be like, you know, I put in that work. And so I get to treat myself to this, um, or like showing myself that I showed up and I did the work, and you get to reward yourself for something like that. So I think those were three really important things for me, as part of the process, that are kind of outside the traditional studying uh, stuff, but were really important for my process. I hope that
That's
answered that
awesome.
question.
You did. You did. It was very good. I loved it. Um, Amanda, thank you so much for taking the time today and doing this interview with us. I really enjoyed talking to you. Loved your approach in a lot of things, how you approached to skip some study, some material, and you got me thinking about, some things, and the pom pom method and the time blocking and the everything you shared. Great insights, and thank you so much for sharing all those things with us. And congratulations on passing your FE exam. We're really proud of you. And yeah, it was really great having you here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm definitely happy to help anybody that I can, because this is a quite a process, and your team is great. And these videos are so helpful to keep the motivation going. So very happy to be here.
Thank you.